I've told you before, the fight is not over on that New York gun control law.
The Supreme Court declined to block New York State's Concealed Carry Improvement Act, while challenges to the law continue.
The justices refused to block the law, allowing it to keep playing out in the lower courts.
The restrictions that New York passed on their statute about where you can have guns, places that don't have a sign saying you can bring a gun in here, you can't go into with a gun. Those laws will still be in effect.
The Supreme Court is allowing New York's gun control laws to stay in effect for now while the battle continues. On Wednesday, that's January 11th, I believe it is, the Supreme Court ruled that New York's gun law, which was enacted in the wake of the High Court's landmark ruling in June that dramatically expanded the right to bear arms outside the home, that law can stay in effect while people are challenging it.
The justices refused to block the law, allowing it to keep playing out in the lower courts. The High Court struck down a previous law in June, which essentially banned carrying guns outside the home. This new law bans guns in many public places where kids would be present, as well as houses of worship and Times Square.
The Supreme Court justices kept on hold a federal judge's ruling that invalidated various provisions of the law. An appeals court had blocked the ruling pending further litigation. The decision suggests that the Supreme Court will wait before they intervene as lower courts interpret their June ruling, which for the first time found that people have a right to bear arms outside their own home under the Constitution's Second Amendment. There were no public dissenting votes, but conservative Justice Samuel Alito said in a statement attached to the brief order, which fellow conservative Justice Clarence Thomas joined, that the decision is not, and this is a quote, expressing any view on the merits of the case, and that the challengers, and again, quote, should not be deterred. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, welcomed this decision, saying in a statement that the state law would keep people safe. I don't believe that for a minute. Her quote is, "We believe that these thoughtful, sensible regulations will help to prevent gun violence." I don't believe that for a minute either. Eric Pratt, the senior vice president of Gun Owners of America, a gun rights group involved in the challenge, said in a statement that although he wanted the law blocked, Alito's statement was incredibly reassuring, as it suggested that the Supreme Court is prepared to step in later. Sorry I'm breaking in on the video right now, but I need to tell you something that's very important if you carry a gun. The legal system is rigged. It punishes gun owners like us while rewarding criminals. But there is hope, and over 700,000 gun owners have found it. It's a USCCA membership. The USCCA helps you before, during, and after a self-defense incident. It's the peace of mind you need if you are a gun owner. Plus, you get free bonuses instantly when you join. Click the link in the description to learn more. Now back to you, Kevin. U.S. District Judge Glenn Suddaby, in a November 7th ruling, struck down a number of provisions of the law, including one that bars firearms in a wide variety of sensitive locations, such as healthcare facilities, churches, parks, entertainment venues, and other places where people gather. He also blocked a provision that requires gun owners to show good moral character to obtain licenses, and another that he said was a sweeping ban on firearms on private property open to the public. So that's good news on all of the gun control front there. This challenge was brought by Ivan Antoniak and 5 other people who say they would like to carry firearms outside their home. New York legislators passed their law banning firearms in many public places and stiffening the permit requirements in July after the Supreme Court's June ruling struck down a century-old law in New York that required gun owners who want to carry handguns outside their homes to prove that they have a unique need for self-defense, as if keeping themselves alive wasn't a unique need. The new law, called the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, I always laugh when they name them, also requires applicants to provide character references, contact information of family members, and people they live with for information about their social media accounts. Various gun owners have challenged provisions of this law, with 3 federal district courts ruling in their favor. In each case, the New York-based 2nd U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals allowed the law to remain in effect pending the full appeals.
The restrictions that New York passed on their statute about where you can have guns, places that don't have a sign saying you can bring a gun in here, you can't go into with a gun. Those laws will still be in effect until first the Court of Appeals hears it in New York, and then ultimately, if the Supreme Court takes the case, the Supreme Court hears it in Washington. So right now, those restrictions are in place. Gun owners are not happy about it.
What that means is New York's egregious law, minus some of the worst parts of it, gets to stay in place while we challenge it. That's kind of understandable, but I've told you before, the Supreme Court ruling was not the end. It was the start, because now that the Supreme Court said the Second Amendment applies to everybody and we don't have to prove a need to defend ourselves, well, now all of these anti-gun politicians and anti-gun states are going to put barriers in the way to stop us every step of the way. We have to be politically active. We have to keep up this fight. Want to know the 3 biggest mistakes when carrying a handgun? Then click on the video next to me to reveal all 3 mistakes. Mistake number 2 may shock you. Everybody has their own cardinal rules for what they're going to do when they're carrying a gun, but right now I'm going to give you 3 things that you must never do